Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the closing bell on the Stock Movers Report. The companies making moves at the close of U.S. trading with Carol Massar, Tim Stenovec, Romaine Bostick, and Scarlett Fu.
And investors today, they were selling stocks. They were also selling treasuries. I will point out, though, that the dollar index, the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index, was higher today. So that dollar getting a little bit of a bid.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the dollar. It's becoming a talking point, isn't it? Because even though it's getting a big bid, it's still hovering near the lows of the year. And we're watching a worry here about whether there is an issue of importing inflation while this tariff strategy gets sorted out.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, too, just for our viewers and more importantly our readers on the Bloomberg terminal and Bloomberg.com, there is really a great tracker, basically a tariff tracker that we've done, because it's kind of hard to wrap your head around it. Tim, you were rattling off a few nations there. I mean, I couldn't even remember which countries were still in play.
I was looking at the live blog, though, to do that. Yeah. I mean, you can't remember this stuff. We spoke to the Trek CEO a little earlier. He said uncertainty. I mean, he doesn't know what's going on. It's uncertain.
Yeah, no one does. And remember that a lot of the tariffs we're talking about today, these are those non-sectoral tariffs, basically the across-the-board ones. This doesn't necessarily impact those sectoral tariffs, the ones on autos, the ones on steel and aluminum, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot for investors to parse, and that's a big reason why a lot of investors may be looking for the door. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down more than 400 points, or 0.9%. The S&P down 49 points, or 0.8%. The Nasdaq Composite is going to close out the day down by 0.9%. And the big decliner on the day, that's the Russell 2000, a drop of 35 points, or 1.6%.
A decidedly down day, as you mentioned, Romaine, in the S&P 500. Only 96 of these stocks did move higher today. 404 were decliners.
Listen, we're looking at a broad-based decline as well in the S&P 500. Most major sectors were definitely in the red today, led down by consumer discretionary, which carries Tesla. So don't be too taken aback there, because we did see also very significant drops in materials, energy, financials, and communication services as well. Really only two sectors in the green: staples, defensive trade, utilities. Got to still buy those picks and shovels, guys.
All right. Well, speaking of buying, I was able to find a few stocks in the green today. The best performer on a percentage basis in the S&P 500 today. Look at that. It's Tractor Supply up 3.9%.
Oh, wow.
Rose today, the highest intraday level going back to April. This is thanks to data from Bloomberg's second measure. It says that adjusted sales observed by Bloomberg's second measure rose 4.3% in the second fiscal quarter. What Bloomberg's second measure does is it analyzes swipe data, mostly from debit cards, to get an understanding for how people are purchasing and what their consumer behavior is. Yeah. The data does draw from a sample of credit and debit card purchases made by U.S. consumers. Analysts currently estimate revenue for the quarter up about 3.6%.
Have you ever been in a Tractor Supply, Tim?
I have not been in a Tractor Supply. Where I grew up, there was like a local version of Tractor Supply called Farm Supply. Okay. So I used to go there all the time.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's where I would get my bag bomb, horse feed, those sorts of things.
Oh, okay.
Have you been to a Tractor Supply?
Yes, I have.
Where?
In suburban Maryland.
Do you remember how popular they were during the pandemic?
I do.
What was that?
I have no idea, Tim.
Okay. We'll move on. From Tractor Supply to rockets, I want to look at Rocket Lab Corporation. RKLB US is the ticker. It's a space company. It's seen as an alternative to SpaceX for some things. It was up 9% today. This always moves, well, I don't want to say always, typically moves higher on days that you see Elon Musk and Donald Trump kind of go at it. Look, Rocket Lab is tiny compared to what SpaceX does and can only do a fraction of what SpaceX does. No question SpaceX is the market leader. But if investors are looking for companies that could be alternatives to some of what SpaceX does, they look at companies such as Rocket Lab. And that's why you have shares higher today by more than 9%. And Wolfspeed in the green today. This has been a decliner for quite some time, up more than 95% today. They filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy late last month. They named a new CEO, Gregor Van Issum, as CFO and EVP, effective September 1st. He does succeed Kevin Spirits, who will return to his prior role of SVP for finance. Once again, shares of Wolfspeed up 95%.
All right, and looking at some of the decliners today, let's start with Tesla. That stock falling 7%, almost $70 billion of market cap wiped out in just one day. And this is coming on concerns that Elon Musk's move to form a new political party, a third party, will draw backlash from President Donald Trump. We saw analysts weighing in on this. William Blair downgraded the stock. They said they would prefer Musk to focus on the robo-taxi rollout. And the broker also noted that Trump's tax bill is set to cut demand for Tesla's emissions standards credits. So that stock down 7% closing out the day. I'm also watching shares of Stellantis. U.S. shares of Stellantis fell as much as 5.7% as Bank of America cut the automaker to neutral from buy, with the broker expecting to see a, quote, very weak first half report on July 29th. And then additionally, the auto workers union warned that the company's Italian car production cratered by a third in the first half and is poised to sink further this year from multi-decade lows. Again, that Stellantis positioning in Europe doesn't look good, at least according to Bank of America, even though the U.S. appears strong. And then finally, Core Scientific, ticker CoreZ, shares were down 17% to close out the day. And this is after CoreWeave agreed to buy the company for $9 billion in an all-stock transaction. Now, analysts are positive on the deal for CoreWeave, but they said the negative reaction in the Core Scientific stock could reflect disappointment with the deal terms. And it really was disappointing. It fell as much as 24% and then paired those losses just a bit, but really down in the red today.
Yeah, phenomenal move in Core Scientific that really kind of defied, at least on the surface, some degree of logic. Meanwhile, a lot more logic to be found in the Treasury space. You did see that Treasury curve re-steepen here with yields on the longer end of the curve up about 6 basis points on the 30-year and on the 2-year yield, the shorter end of the curve, only up by about 2 basis points here. And a lot of this seems to be based on the idea of the longer-term risk, potential risk, perceived risk right now going on in the United States and the compensation that investors would demand to take on that risk.
The Stock Movers Report from Bloomberg Radio. Check back with us throughout the day for the latest roundup of companies making news on Wall Street. And for the latest market-moving headlines, listen to Bloomberg Radio live. Catch us on YouTube, Bloomberg.com, and on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app.